as a business owner, I think that's just the wrong way to do YouTube, period. Do the opposite of what people are doing. That takes risk, but that's actually, I think, what everybody wants.
Ken McElroy is a real estate mogul, investor, CEO who's raised over $1 billion in capital. He has built an incredible YouTube channel with over 470,000 subscribers and 45 million views.
Every partnership that I've ever seen, it's always that one person feels like they're pulling more weight than the other. And so the question is, if they're not aligned or they do the exact same thing, it's probably not a good partnership. So,
do you think the average person is underestimating AI?
I do. I think it's the greatest time to start a business ever. A friend of mine who said that he represents a company where they have an AI board member.
Okay. I mean, is it a sentient being?
I didn't go into it.
Do they have equity?
All of that stuff is interesting. But if you're over 40, you're not worried. Yeah. But you should be. When YouTube came around, I was like, this is a great opportunity for me, to be quite honest, not to have to get on the road, not to have to fly to some place and speak in front of a group of people. And, and I could be home more with my family. And I'll tell you something really interesting. I get so many emails and conversations and people coming up to me. They're like, thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm not always right, but I just put it out that way. YouTube gives me more than I give it, I feel like. We own over 10,000 apartments now and a couple $1 billion worth of assets. And so I started with a business, and then I'm backing into YouTube, and I cannot believe the power it has.
I still don't think you went viral by accident.
Yeah, no, I agree. My channel's been growing the way it has been for various reasons, but I think those are really, really important things. Well, first,
today's guest is not your typical influencer. This year already, he has bought over $503 million in real estate, raising money using YouTube. And so you see a lot of people spouting off business advice, real estate advice, and even content advice on the internet. But if you dig deep, you find that they don't have a ton of depth. Well, I'm excited because today's guest is a real estate investor, CEO, and strategist who doesn't really just care about going viral, but cares about trust, leads, and leverage. Ken McElroy is a real estate mogul and investor, CEO who's raised over $1 billion in capital. And he has built an incredible YouTube channel with over 470,000 subscribers and 45 million views. So this is going to be a power-packed episode on YouTube strategy, on starting and growing, and really on the business mindset and a strategic mindset that you're probably not going to find anywhere else on YouTube. Ken, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks. I appreciate being here.
So I'm super grateful to talk to you. And let's go kind of in the lightning round with a few things. You've got 470,000 subs. What's working best right now on YouTube that you've seen for growing your channel?
Well, the shorts seem to be working right now, right? And we just kind of started those. So, I'm still learning about YouTube. I started with a business, and then I'm backing into YouTube, and I cannot believe the power that it has and holds. And so I'm still learning.
How long have you been on the platform?
Really just about 4 or 5 years. And we had a channel before that, but we really didn't do much on it. And the pandemic kind of gave me the time to dedicate to it. And that's really when I started focusing on it more.
And what was your motivation and mindset, being a busy business owner, operating all kinds of different stuff, to take the time to invest in content?
Well, I had a history prior to that of speaking, and I have books that I've done over the years. And, I have 6 different books on real estate, and those have done really well. And so people knew who I was. I was doing book signings and touring and things like that with one of our investors, Robert Kiyosaki, who wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So, I had a little bit of experience out there. And what happened was I saw these YouTube influencers, mostly young, online, selling books and tapes and courses. And I'm like, what does a 20-year-old really know? And I'm like, well, I think there's a market for knowledge, and I never had the time. And here I was at home. So I found a guy to help me film off of Craigslist, of all places. He came into my house, and we just started.
How long have you been in business?
Been in business over 30 years.
So you mentioned, these young influencers giving business advice. What's your brutal opinion about maybe some of the real estate advice out there, the people just putting stuff out on YouTube when it comes to like who we're listening to for advice? I always
just default to who is your teacher and what are they doing, right? And I feel the same way about the school system, to be honest. Like, who am I getting advice from? And that's why I love YouTube, because if you really flush it out, I love golf, for example. I'm going to go watch people that are actually at the top of their game that are doing videos, right? Those are the people, but there's a whole slew of people that aren't. And so it's the same kind of thing in real estate for me is I'm not looking for house flippers. I'm not looking for people that are trying to sell coaching and mentoring. I'm really looking for people that are really doing it. And those are the people I follow.
And what's like your sniff test for that? Or what would you say, how many fake or exaggerated claims and exaggerated gurus are there on the internet right now?
I would say most. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure some people have really good points here and there, but there's not a lot of old guys like me on YouTube. And so that's actually why I'm excited about it. And I think that's partially why my channel's been growing the way it has been. It's not that I have any revolutionary advice. It's just guys my age and even friends of mine that I really admire, I would call them peers. They're not on YouTube, right?
Yeah.
And those are the guys, that's really the environment I hang out in mostly.
Yeah. So that's interesting. It's one reason why I'm so grateful you're on the podcast is because of just the depth of knowledge that you have. And what's your mindset when it comes to YouTube? Because of course, a lot of creators think about ad revenue. I'm thinking that's not what you care about. What do you track instead?
Yeah, I'll actually tell you the funniest story ever. This is absolutely true. I first did my YouTube videos and a couple of them went viral. And I think that's probably because a lot of people were home during the pandemic. And about 4 or 5 months later, the guy who was helping me goes, how much money are you making? I go, what are you talking about? And he goes, well, they run ads against your stuff and there's money that comes in. And I'm like, where is it?
Yeah.
How much is it? And we, after figuring it out, we realized that somebody had set up a bank account attached to it and there was money in it. And that was actually, I didn't do it initially for money. And I found the money later. And then I started thinking, well, man, if I can really embrace this and I can have YouTube pay for my staff, and that was where my head was. It's just like any other business. How do I generate money on YouTube so I can employ people to get my message out there more? And so that's really been my focus. I have never, ever taken one nickel out of the company for anything, any kind of living or anything. It's always poured right back into people or to growth of the business itself. So yes, it's super secondary. It's really fun, and I'm learning so much because the people I'm hiring, they know so much. I know nothing compared to them. It's been a blast.
So you accidentally were essentially making money. You were like, wait, I've got money. It's just sitting in a bank account.
Yeah.
That was set up. A couple of videos went viral. What is some of the secrets? Because I can see some strategy in the topics you cover, the titles you choose. You definitely tap into kind of maybe a news and a perspective, and always there can be so many ups and downs with interest rates and all these different things. I still don't think you went viral by accident.
Yeah, no, I agree. Now I watch, I have a huge responsibility because people invest with me. That's like that's what keeps me up at night. Like, I have the trust of so many people, and am I putting their money in the right place? And to me, that's the whole issue. And so I'm OCD or anal or whatever you want to call it over all the data and all the analytics with markets, with sub-markets, with development, construction, interest rates, inflation, operating expenses, you name it. So that's where I spent all my time. And so what was easy for me was to be able to just talk about those things on the channel. And that's really where I need to be. And so what I'm doing is I'm saying, this is why I wouldn't buy here, or this is the obstacle I've got going on. I've got 300 employees, and we own over 10,000 apartments now, and a couple $1 billion worth of assets that we bought over the years. And I've sold a bunch, I own a bunch. And so I have a property management company, a development company, a construction company. And so we're doing all these things. And so I am literally in the boardroom with lenders and, private equity and wealth managers and my own people, trying to figure out how do I deploy the right capital in the right spot for the return for not only myself, but for my investors. So that's what I do 95% of the time. And so for when I get on a mic in front of YouTube, I'm already there. There's not a tremendous amount of research. There are some things that I'm tracking, like everyone. I'm tracking the Fed, I'm tracking the administration and the policies and those things that are going on. So what actually has been helpful is I actually take what I'm reading or researching for granted, and everyone else around me is saying, you should be talking about that. You should be talking about that. I'm like, oh, good idea. So it's actually the opposite, where it's not a tremendous amount of prep. It's really, I literally moved from my boardroom into the podcast room with almost the same topic that I just had. And sometimes with really cool examples from people that I'm across the table from. And so it's kind of real time.
So there's a couple big takeaways for me. It would seem that in a way, your YouTube success is at the intersection of lived experience. Nothing beats actual experience, time in the trenches. What you're already doing in terms of research, what you're already researching, what you're already studying, and at the intersection of those, and then real operation, not just previous experience, but having case studies and stories from what's happening now. And so YouTube's just an extension of that.
Yeah.
Because you're living it over here, you can make content quickly, because you're not sitting down to research content. You're living that real estate life, that investing life, and then just hitting record and making videos about it. And people want to know what you know because you're playing the game at such a high level.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So as an example, like we have properties that are doing really well. We have properties that aren't, right? And we're all over that. And so I talk about that. And we have properties that we're developing, and we have properties that we're buying, and we have properties that we're refinancing. So I just bring all that into the podcast room, and we just talk about that.
Your wins and your losses. So this one's going well, lessons, this one's not going well, gives you the case studies and the real substance, which is going to make you stand out from somebody who's either just doing theory. Information might be good, but it's not the lived experience and the book of business and all of that you have going on.
Right. And the cool part is I can bring in some of my people. Like I brought in the head of our management company as an example. And one of my topics was what's really going on with my 10,000 tenants. And she came in and she was nervous as heck, as you can imagine, but she crushed it. And she's like, this is really what's happening at the street level, at Main Street. So those are resources I have that, that work for me now.
For other professionals, investors, they're in real estate, maybe they're agents, maybe at a high level, business people, entrepreneurs. What do you think the decision-making framework you would encourage them if they said, I'm trying to think if YouTube is right for me? Should I do YouTube? And why should I do YouTube? Is there going to be an ROI for me? How would you coach a professional to make that decision?
Really good question. Well, first, I will tell you, when I was doing all my real estate investing and all that stuff, and then I ran into Robert Kiyosaki. He had written that book, Rich Dad Poor Dad. I had not read it, and I didn't know who he was. And he said, I want to invest with you. I'm like, okay, just like, I was raising capital at the time. I went to one of his events and he asked me to come up and speak. And I couldn't believe the amount of knowledge that people were looking for in the room. And that kind of showed me that there's a lot of people out there that really just want like what's really going on at the Main Street level, and so that's when I kind of learned that there's this insatiable appetite for people that really don't know how, and so I had done that for some time, and so when YouTube came around, I was like, this is a great opportunity for me to be quite honest, not to have to get on the road. Not to have to fly to some place and speak in front of a group of people, and and I could be home more with my family and not have all that travel. Where I can get to more people quicker, and I'm really saying kind of the same things I was even when I show up at somewhere, and so I was doing some speaking here and there just to elevate our brand. And this is who we are. This is what we're doing. And YouTube just really, really obviously escalated that to incredible degree. And so for us, I'm just trying to take a local little company out of Scottsdale, Arizona, like that I've started, and let more people know about it. And it seemed to work.
So if you were coaching somebody, would you say you were already speaking? Do you think that's a prerequisite, that they are going to want to be on camera and actually create content?
I do. I think they need to learn how to communicate. And I'll tell you something really interesting. I'd been doing all that stuff for all those years, and I've actually hired speaking coaches and all that kind of stuff. Because, I think like anything, like yourself, if you want to do something, you know, whether it's running a marathon or working out or CrossFit or anything, it's good to have coaches. And I just firmly believe that. So I felt the same way. And so, yes, I think anytime that you can learn that. And what I did is during the pandemic, of all things, I went and took comedy class, stand-up comedy. And I did it, obviously, because I was like, I need to learn, how to bring more comedy, more humor, because I'm kind of serious when I'm on stage, and I didn't like that about me. So I'm constantly doing things like that. And I think the more that you can just sharpen that saw. And so, yes, I think everybody starts at the same place. They don't know how to do it. My wife and I did it together, and she is shy. And afterwards, about a week later, she had to do this presentation with somebody. She goes, I just stood right up for 5 minutes. And she goes, it was easy as heck, compared to, we had to do a live, at the end of 12 weeks, we had to do a live studio audience, stand-up comedian routine. And she said, compared to that, this was easy. And so yes, those things do matter. And and so, yes, I think anytime anybody can learn how to present, speak better, communicate better, articulate really complex things simply. I love that in Steve Jobs' book. He talks really, really a lot about this. How do you take something so complex and narrow it down so that people can really, really understand? Kiyosaki is a master at this through storytelling and all that. That does not come natural. You have to read, you have to listen, you have to absorb. And so I'm still continuing to do that today.
So if a operator, CEO, business owner wants to get into YouTube, they're talking to you about whether or not they should do it or how they should approach it. They, number one, need to have the desire.
Yeah.
They maybe still need to work on their skills. What if they said, but I don't want to be in the content myself, but should I leverage YouTube? If I want to get more brand awareness, if I want to get leads, in 2025, would you recommend YouTube as an asset, a strategic business asset for business owners?
Without a doubt. And I'll tell you, one of the books that I bought after we met was Founder's Brand. I actually still have it with me. Even I was reading it on the plane here, and it specifically says that people follow people, not necessarily these corporate brands. And there's some truth to that. And, I know it does get gray in some of those areas, but, and I think that most people don't really want to be on the forefront. They maybe, they like to be a little more humble, or they think it's egoic or whatever. And I agree with a lot of that. But I will tell you, and I actually, I don't do it for any of those reasons. I believe that Wall Street specifically is taking people's money. They're taking it in the form of a pension. They're taking it in the form of insurance policies. They're taking it in the form of 401k or retirement, and they manage it for themselves. And so most people don't understand what to even ask. It just gets managed. And so that's the villain for me. And so for me, this is an opportunity for me to say, take control. You don't necessarily have to invest with me, but take control. And this is what you don't get taught in school. And take control of your finances. And even if you turn it over to somebody, ask the right questions. And so that's, so when you start to think of the why, whatever the why is, this is way bigger than me raising money for real estate. And so I think then it starts to make sense.
So that's interesting. So because for someone listening to this, especially a professional that's maybe already wealthy and successful, it might be hard to get over the hump of the effort it's going to take or the time it's going to take to do YouTube. But what you're saying is, but if you got a bigger mission and, I don't know, I might get uncomfortable. I don't want to put myself out there. What are people going to think? You're saying you get a stronger why than all of that, and YouTube is an amplifier. So that's why you invest in it. That's why you want to figure it out. Am I tracking?
100%. And I get so many emails and conversations and people coming up to me. It just even at the airport, they're like, "Thank you, thank you, thank you. You know, you've changed the direction of my family." And you know, because I really try to just put out, you know, this is the way I see it. And right or wrong, you know, I'm not always right, but I just put it out that way, and it's received that way. And I tell you, YouTube gives me more than I give it, I feel like.
So what's your goal with every video you post? How do you track success?
Well, obviously, like everyone, you know, on the impressions and the views and all that kind of stuff. And so like anything, I'm trying to be as good as I can. I'm learning about, you know, hooks and the way ad spend works and all those little things, and cadence, you know, and also being really clear and short and to the point and all of those things. So for me, that's what I'm trying to do. But at the end of the day, I think success is it all rolls up to just the education part. If my channel is viewed as one of the channels that's not selling people stuff, it's just, you know, it's just educational. I get this all the time. I know you don't have to do this, but thank you. You just look at my comments, you'll see a lot of people say thank you. In fact, sometimes people will get on me for like being late or something. Sometimes I'm late, and they're like, give him a break. He doesn't have to do this, you know? And so it's nice. So my community kind of covers my butt sometimes, you know, cause I'm busy. And so that's been great. So the community's given me a lot.
Well, so then you're giving all this incredible information. You're changing people's life. They come up to you in the airport. Thank you for the impact. Yet at the same time, people can also still be an investor with you, or they still can discover education materials that'll take them deeper. So how does that happen with your YouTube channel? Yeah.
So there's a few ways. You know, I don't know that I've ever done a video that says, do you guys want to invest with me? Ever. I just always say, here's a deal I'm working on. We just bought a deal in North Scottsdale. It was $97 million. We just closed it like less than a month ago. And we had like 50 million in debt and call it close to 50 million in equity, right? And, you know, I just talk about it. I got this deal in escrow. I take a video, walking around the hallway, say hi to the manager, you know, just real basic. And sometimes I'm in the boardroom or meeting with maybe some lenders, and what they do is they like, hey, how do we know more about this deal? And that's kind of how it goes. And it's not, we don't do any kind of pitches or investment, any kind of decks or anything like that on YouTube. I just literally talk about the stuff I'm working on, and organically the list grows. I think we're a little over 4,000 people right now that say that that they want to invest in our deals, all accredited investors.
So you're building an email list of accredited investors.
Yeah.
And there's this term called brand lift. So essentially, if someone sees a video, they see content, they see you walking through, what may be happening is they're looking up your website, or they're clicking through to be like, their interest is created. They're looking out your brand. They're seeking out your brand. And then their curiosity is piqued. They want to get on that list so they could get into the deals.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And so what we do is I just keep everybody up to date on where we are. And then when we hit send when the business plan is done, and I've done all my due diligence, we hit and that business plan gets sent to everyone at the exact same time. And then it gets filled based on my investment relations team. They basically get the emails and say, I'm in, and that's how we do our raises.
So do you think, you've seen probably different approaches. Do you think that business owners should pitch or sell on YouTube? It's not your philosophy. Are you intentional about being against that? Maybe the ways other people are doing it, a little harder sell. It seems like you have kind of a soft sell approach, and it's clearly working.
Yeah, I have this theory: the bigger the brochure, the worse the deal. I believe that.
Yeah.
Like the more you have to like, like if I sit down with you over a restaurant and I carve something out on a napkin, it has 3 or 4 moves and you're like, okay, I got it.
It makes sense. It's simple. Yeah.
That's it. I think everything should be that simple. And if they're not, then there's all this sales stuff around, whatever it is. And so I'm like, that doesn't sniff correctly to me. It just seems to me like, and I always have the same model too for me. So I'm a cash flow guy, period. I'm not a capital gain guy. So the difference is if I'm going to buy something today, it has to have cash flow, period. If I'm going to take it out of a 4%, let's say treasury, it's got to make way more than that, period. It's not going to be, if we do these things and the market, cooperates, then, so I don't do any of that. So everything we buy has to have that sniff test. And then of course I want what's called forced equity. So it needs to have some kind of story. It says, it's 50% occupied and, we're going to bring it up to market or whatever it is, just nothing crazy. And so real basic stuff that people can understand.
That's fascinating. I love the vision of simplicity and the more marketing, sales, fireworks, if you will, and people are doing cartwheels to try to make a deal happen. The simplicity of if you got the real stuff, it doesn't need all the spice.
Doesn't. No, it really doesn't. Like like you've bought stuff before. You're like, okay, this is a good deal.
Yeah.
Like, immediately. Most people know immediately. And so, I just, now for me, it's how many people know, right? And it's different. I'm just, how can I increase my bandwidth of people actually seeing that video of me walking through a project that we're about ready to buy? And so to me, that's the right way to do that, is just let more people know, but never have any kind of closing technique or any kind of stuff like that.
Do you think all real estate investors should start YouTube channels?
No. Well, I guess it depends on, what kind of investor they are.
Yeah.
So, and here's what I mean. Like, I think we just went through that. And there's a tremendous amount of people that realized that they could raise money on YouTube, and they did. And that's starting to show itself now. And a lot of those people are really in trouble.
Because they might have been good at communicating, good at content, good at marketing, big brochure.
Yeah.
And got some money, but they didn't. Especially some people that maybe deployed that in the last 4 years at the wrong time.
Yeah, and I would go out and even say that I don't think they believed in their heart that they were actually doing anything wrong.
Sure.
But they don't know what they don't know. So they think that money is, when you have money, you should go buy stuff. I don't think that way. I think when you have an incredible deal, then you go find the money. It's very different. So, you never hypes. It's the wrong way around. Like you always find something that, and then like again, like if I'm sitting with you and I go, check this out, and you're like, okay, I want in on that. Then the business plan and the raising the money become the very last thing. It's actually the easiest part. The raising the money is honestly the easiest part.
If the deal is great.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly right. So that's what I mean by real estate investor. So it's a big category. And so the question would be, and there's so many of these examples. If there's somebody that was a teacher or a plumber or an engineer, and all of a sudden they're like, I'm going to go out and raise money online, they're a real estate investor. Would you invest with them? Probably not. I probably would though, if they got the heck beat out of them, after 4 or 5 or 6 years or 10 years. And so my general rule is not to really listen to anybody that hasn't done it for at least 10 years, because they have to go through cycles. Like right now, they're freaking out. My entire career was built on today's interest rates. like from the beginning.
Yeah.
Like what we just went through was a gift.
Yeah.
So this is super normal for me. But if you started 6, 7, 8 years ago, you're freaking out.
Yeah.
Like this is the worst market ever. It's not. It's the greatest time. So, I have a different perspective. And so you have to, you don't learn anything when times are good. Like you learn everything when you're losing stuff and, and a deal doesn't go well and you're talking to your lenders and your investors and you're scrambling with your property managers and that's actually when you learn the most.
Are you ready to start your YouTube channel, but you don't know where to begin? Or have you been posting videos, but you're frustrated because you're just not getting the views and nobody is seeing them? For a limited time, you can get the #1 best-selling YouTube strategy book, YouTube Secrets, for free at ytsecrets.com. This book is the proven blueprint that has helped thousands of people go from 0 subscribers to a thriving channel. All I ask is that you pay shipping and then I will mail you the brand new updated 2nd edition of YouTube Secrets. And when you place your order today, there's a couple other super cool things that'll hook you up with. First, you're gonna get instant access to a free deep dive masterclass where I will break down the exact strategy I'm currently using to generate over 120,000 views per day, every single day on YouTube, and generate over $100,000 per month on the platform, as well as the 3 biggest mistakes that most creators make when starting and trying to grow their channel. That class is free to watch instantly when you pick up this special offer. Now, you're also gonna get my video series called The Perfect Video Recipe. One of the updated chapters in the 2nd edition is titled The Perfect Video Recipe. It's actually a formula for how to structure YouTube videos to get maximum views and how to break through in the YouTube algorithm. This is the exact formula that readers of the book and our students are using to generate millions of views. And again, that'll just be included when you jump on this limited offer. Third, you're gonna get access to our 1,000 Subs Club email newsletter, which delivers actionable weekly tips to your email inbox that will help you get to 1,000 subscribers fast. And we also do really cool weekly giveaways that includes lighting and microphones and YouTube equipment, plus software that will help you on your creator journey. But here's the thing, supplies are limited on this free book promotion. So if you wanna grab this offer, go to ytsecrets.com right now and just place your order covering shipping, and I'll get this book in the mail to you right away.
So when it comes to building the machine of YouTube, team, delegation, you have a co-host, there's others that might want to co-lead or have, co-host a podcast with a spouse. There could be pros and cons or challenges with that if they're listening to this, but you're not editing, you're not uploading. So what does your team handle and how did you build that?
Yeah. So I first started with my guy, Jerry, who right off of Craigslist literally came to my house. He did everything.
What was the Craigslist search?
He was, for me, it was just somebody who could video it.
So it's like videographers in Scottsdale?
Video and edit. Yes, exactly right.
Okay.
And it was COVID.
Yeah.
And my idea was, so everybody had been sent home, as you know, and we were like, okay, well, we probably need a studio now because people don't want to travel. So I had one of my original books that was a bestseller. Still is crushing it. It's called The ABCs of Real Estate Investing. I'm like, I'm going to turn that into a video book. And that was actually how I started.
For free?
For free, yeah.
So I'm going to take a book that I have, film a video series around it, upload it to YouTube. So
that took hours and hours and hours, right? Going through each chapter. And he came to my house and we filmed it. And then he's like, we probably should, like, this, you could probably sell this. I was like, because I had never sold anything online. And so we put it out there for a modest price. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was not very much, a few $100 maybe. And we sold like $250,000 in a week.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? And these are probably people that had read my book because by that time the book had been out for over 10 years. And so that paid for my studio. So like, okay, this is interesting.
And you build it at home?
No, we did it at my office.
Okay. So you had an office in Scottsdale?
Yeah.
And you had some space that you devoted. Do you know how big the actual studio is?
Yeah, it was probably 20 by 30. It was a file storage room.
Okay.
In my office. We just pulled all the files out and painted it black and had raised ceilings. And
how much did you spend?
we spent, what they did is they built the studio in a hangar, and then we went and checked it out. It was like, you could check how you wanted it, how big and all that. So I had to raise floor and all that, and it had the bars up top with.
So you went. This is a very nice studio.
Yeah, and I didn't know any better, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, okay.
Yeah.
So we had somebody kind of quarterbacking it, and it ended up costing us $150,000, I think, for just that.
And and counting the cameras and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And then we have our own in-house construction team, right? So I just called John Kraus, our head of construction. I go, hey, I need this room turned.
Yep.
And so he came with his crew and did that. And so that was pretty cheap. But and then we just started filming in there. But
and his name was Jerry?
Jerry, yeah.
Did he make it all the way? So now
he's still
you
here.
met him on Craigslist. He's still here.
Jerry's still with me. Yeah.
Now there's a studio. Did you shoot the ABC's real estate investing just at your office?
At my house.
At your house.
At the house, because the office was closed at the time.
Got it.
And so that's when I realized. But then to be honest, I didn't really want to be in the product selling, that
like
that,
courses.
No, that wasn't really my thing. So, I did that to build the studio, right? I was like, well, because it's either out of my pocket or go figure this out. So we figured that out. That worked. And so after that, more people wanted some stuff. So we did that for a little while. But I was like, that's just not my thing. I don't really want to do courses and coaching and those kinds of things. Now, what we have found is there's a lot of people at different price points that want different things, and so we've now kind of settled in on a program. We have a very basic,
like a membership.
Yep, very basic website-based membership where they have access to me. And then I have the Limitless Conference, which is one time a year. We have about 2,000 people come. We have 50 speakers, 5 stages. And that's for like more accredited type investors. And then I have a mastermind that I do 4 times a year. And that's a little bit more expensive. And that's me for 2.5 days.
Got it. So you've kind of built out different levels to serve people at different levels. They're not an accredited investor yet, but they want to get into the real estate game. They could be a part of your membership.
Yep.
How long did it take to build out these things?
Forever.
It's been the last 5 years to build this stuff?
Yeah. It was all like, it was driven by customer. Not really that strategic, to be honest. I didn't really sit down and go, this is, it was who are we serving? And also looking at other people. What are they doing? How does this work? At the same time, trying to run my business, but what was happening is we have a lot of people that want to be coached or mentored, and I don't have the time for that. And I didn't want to be in that business, but I did say if I could create a mastermind and have 4 events a year. First I checked with my wife, like, is this cool?
Yeah.
And she's like, yeah, let's do it. I go, okay. So we did that. And I have 4 partners in that so that I don't have to carry all the weight. So once again, not necessarily doing it for the income, doing it because I have investors that are with me that are in that mastermind, but also we bring in all kinds of stuff. Like the last time it was all AI and all gold and silver, and George Gammon, he's a partner. He's just speaks about he lives in Colombia. He looks at the world a little bit differently, and so we have this, and that's what I learned, Sean, with my investors. Like anybody, they're not all in with me. They're everywhere. They want to know about gold and silver and oil and gas and real and self-storage and multifamily and single family, and they want to know about stocks and bonds and all those things like anyone would. And so that's the goal of that, and that's the goal of Limitless too. Is I just listen to my investors, and they have so many questions on so many things, and I like to stay in my lane. And I'm like, it's a really, really good idea. Let's bring everyone into one room and vet them, make sure that they're really doing the work and they're not just selling products. So like at Limitless, there's no selling from stage, zero.
Yeah.
It's just pure education.
And how big are the masterminds?
We're at around 50 right now. So actually we capped it at 50.
And they go to all 4 or just 50 each?
They're 50 people,
For the whole year.
Four events a year.
So kind of very exclusive way to get connected. Is that also, you said it's not really a money-making thing, especially compared to everything else you're doing. Have you found though, it's this idea of iron sharpens iron, like getting that deal flow, knowledge flow, that if there's anything you want to do, it's kind of like you mentioned, if you were going to take health seriously, you would hire a coach and get a trainer. But even the community you're in, that just amplifies everything.
It's unbelievable. And I'll just give you an example. We just had it in Orlando, and I was trying to figure out, why is gold making such a run? Like, it's on this crazy run right now. And I was like, I don't know. I'm in the real estate game. I'm trying to keep my head down on that. So we have 2 members. One is Mike Maloney, who owns goldsilver.com. The other is Daniel Samuelson, who is one of the biggest gold dealers out of Austin, Texas. We had those 2, and we had Robert Kiyosaki and George Gammon just do a panel to 50 people.
Wow.
And, like just softball questions, and they all had different perspectives. And George was looking at it from the euro dollar and what's going on with people trusting the US dollar and the flight to that. And Dana, and Mike lives in Puerto Rico. So, and they're all, Mike, and by the way, all those people are our own members. They're not paid speakers. So they came out of the room. And so I feel like everybody has a really, really good perspective on what they do. And a lot of people are at the top of their game. And you can't be everything. So for us, we do bring in speakers from time to time, but I think that when you can just bring something up like that out of the room, it's powerful, and so that's what that's for, and also the one-on-ones, the breakfasts and the lunches and the dinners and all those kinds of things. I mean, that's how we met, right?
That's right.
Yeah, just that side stuff is being in the room is also important.
That's a great point. We were in a room of less than 100 people.
Yeah, at
a YPO thing, and we were both speaking, but we sit down, we have lunch. Here we are.
Yeah.
That's so powerful. Okay, so we're talking about team. What has it grown into for the isolated YouTube stuff? So Jerry, he's helping you film. What's it take to get done? Titles, thumbnails, channel management, all that.
Yep. So I've got basically just a few people. I've got Jerry basically. So what I've done recently is we have Jerry in charge of podcasts. So Jerry does all the filming. He does audio, video. So, we're crushing it also on their downloads for the podcasts. So he's just in charge of podcasts. And then we have a guy by the name of Josh who does our YouTube. And Josh comes up with the titles and the thumbnails. And we have a lot of that stuff outsourced out of the country. Some of it, not all of it.
Like some thumbnail design.
Yep. Thumbnail design and titles. And all of that. And so Josh is pretty much in charge of that. And then we have a guy in-house. So as a real estate company, I have a marketing team of, a dozen people, right? How do I fill my projects and, keep our brand relevant and all that stuff on my core business. So I've been able to utilize some of those folks, but also I have a full-time guy that does our social media. And Twitter, LinkedIn, the stuff that's relevant for me is mostly, I would say, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube, I would say, even though we post on all the stuff. And then we have the KPIs and the metrics and all that kind of stuff for all those kinds of things. And then my assistant, Annika, kind of is our quarterback, right? And she will eventually move to probably running the whole thing. And then we have a kid out of India that does our website, the kind of the back end, make sure there's nothing broken and all that kind of stuff. And I'm saying like I know, but that's what he says. Yeah. It's broken. I will fix it. Okay. Yeah. So, and that's it.
So if I'm a business owner and I don't have unlimited resources, or nobody does, but I've got limited resources, but I want to deploy some capital. My business is doing well. What would a realistic investment be if you were coaching somebody that wanted to do it kind of big like you are, build a studio, maybe
Yeah.
not a crazy, maybe
Yeah.
not spend $150,000, but get the team. And what are some maybe tips and advice you've learned and lessons and how they might build that
Yeah.
team up to support them on doing YouTube?
First of all, you don't need to spend that kind of money at a studio. I realize, right? For sure. That was I wouldn't call it a mistake. It was a learning lesson.
Sure.
But people, what I've noticed is that some of our best videos are when we're at some of my properties. And, so you don't need a studio. So for me, it feels like that the more authentic you are, the more stuff you're doing out there, like if you can film things that you're actually doing out and about, those are just as good. But then I think what people, there's a lot of hype. So if you really want to grow your audience, you just tell them the truth. Like, it's just like, this is what's going on with me. And, and that's it. And it's truthful, and it's not always easy for people. Some people don't like to, they think that,
Some people have something to hide.
Perhaps. Yeah. And so I think that that's been one of the bigger things for us, in running a business the size that I have now, like I said, we got close to 300 people. That's what I have to do anyway. I mean, I can't sit down with my CIO, my COO, my CFO, my CEO and BS them.
Sure.
I'm like,
because you got real math, real investors that it really has to work.
Right.
Yeah.
So, those are the conversations we're having anyway.
Sure.
So, now some of them, I got to be careful. Can't, there are sensitive subjects out there with personnel and things like that. But mostly there's a lot you can put out there. And I think that if you want to clearly define who you are, talk about the stuff that's going wrong. And oftentimes I think the community sometimes offers really, really interesting and good answers, stuff that you maybe haven't thought about.
What do you think about rev share versus salary for creative talent?
Yeah. So I'm all over the map on that. And just in my business, I always believe that if the people who are okay with rev share are confident in themselves. So, and the ones that aren't want the salary. Now, so I always start with rev share and then I move to salary perhaps, or some kind of base. But, in the real estate world, my acquisitions, or even in the residential side, which I don't do, but those are all eat what you kill models. And I'm a big fan of that. You if you can do what you say, you can grow it like that, then I'll give you the lion's share, but let's both win. And because I find that sometimes that creates a comfort for them. But I always reward the person who's proven themselves over a couple of years on the rev share model. So I start with rev share if I can. Not always, but most of the time. And then there's some kind of always incentive based, and pay them really well, and then move them to salary.
For some people listening to this, though, it's like what do you think about this model? Like, okay, I want to get into the YouTube game. There maybe isn't any revenue yet related to YouTube, like maybe giving up some of the ad revenue, but maybe cast some vision and say, hey, like if you help me grow this, you obviously need to make a living, or maybe I just pay you as a contractor because we're only shooting some videos sometimes. But if we grow this together, this could turn into something, and I'll give you this rev share. I've got one of our students and part of our community, Ben, recently, he is actually doing 50% of his ad revenue, which his channel has grown so much for an individual that's helping him. It's a 6-figure income for this individual, but it's worth it to him because his YouTube channel also drives to other places. So I guess if you were coaching a business owner, maybe how they might cast vision, get some people enlisted, but early on, like what should their mindset be if they're early on their YouTube channel? It might see it as a giant sunk cost. That it's not growing yet, the views aren't there yet. How long do you need to invest in this thing, and how might you cast some vision? And what are your thoughts on if maybe I was building this thing up, kind of bootstrapping it as a separate media company inside of my company?
It's a really, really insightful question. There's a few things. One, I don't think that a business owner that's starting has the knowledge to grow a YouTube channel at all. and so I just look at
For sure.
I just look at my own experience. I'm like, okay, what does that mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like really basic things. So funny story, but Josh, who was 19 when he came to me,
Okay.
and he came up to me and he goes, "Your YouTube channel sucks."
Okay.
And I go, "That's a great sales pitch." And he laughed, and I said, "Tell me more, right?" And he said, "These are the things." And he just saw me. I was just doing my thing and not really paying much attention.
Where
to
did
it.
he run into you?
And we were I was at a Rebel Capitalist conference in Miami, and he was attending. And there's a whole story behind that on how he got there, which is just incredible. But what he did is he poured himself into YouTube, and he apparently knew who I was, studied me, walked up to me, and he said that. And I said, "Okay, tell me more." And so I said to him, "Okay, let's do this. I'll take my total views, my total revenue actually for the last 12 months, and that'll be the base. And I'll give you a percentage over that, a large percentage over that." And he's like, "Done." And that was how I met Josh. It wasn't me going out and trying to force something. It was him coming to me. And now, not everyone's in a position where that's going to happen.
You already had some momentum.
I did.
And a brand.
Right. But the point is I didn't go out and look for this like I was trying to find an assistant. Like it's a very unique person that would actually be that comfortable. And he's crushed it, for what he's done, from when he started. And I've learned a lot from him. And I think he's 22 now, right? You know what I mean? But he pitched me, and to your point, I already had things going, but I probably would have flatlined had I not done that. And he made a lot of money. We grew. And so all of those things were beneficial. And so I guess back to the original thing, I think if somebody just wants to start a YouTube channel, I remember trying to get on the phone with people. What do I do? What's a hook? Just basic stuff. And so you have to go through that. You're way better off. You want to, a hack is find somebody that is willing to do that, even if it's for a short period of time. And there's nothing wrong for paying for that, in my opinion, to fast track stuff.
Yeah.
I think a consultant maybe would be the first line of defense. And then, but on their side, to be fair, is that business owner really committed? Are they really committed to cranking out content, and what are they going to be like? And are they going to, oh, well, it's a pain in my butt. Is it going to be that? Cause I know a lot of people have tried podcasts that way. And so I think it kind of goes both ways. What I realized is when I found Jerry and I did my first couple of YouTubes, I didn't realize that I was all in, on day one.
Yeah.
And now we've grown. For me, I've just been obsessive on how do I make it better?
Yeah.
And how do I deliver more results for the people watching? And so it does go both ways. If you have something unique, a business that's unique, or something that people want and that's out there, or even just a good idea, I think the people in that space would love to be part of that ride. It's kind of that brochure thing again, it's, what is their full commitment to it?
I want to drill down actually a little bit on these roles, Jerry, Josh. But what's interesting, you just said, it sounds like a really important insight. If this thing is going to work, yeah, you could hire talent, you could hire a team, but the main person, they got to be in on it. A lot of business owners are like, can I just hire somebody to do YouTube for me?
Correct.
Can I hire somebody to just do my podcast for me? When you say you learn later that you were in it, what does being in it mean?
Yeah.
It means you care, you're bought in, you're not just being fully told what to do. You're a content creator yourself.
Yeah.
You're formulating the knowledge and you're learning yourself. You're trusting others, but you aren't just outsourcing it. The claim we could be making here is it's not outsourceable. fully.
Right.
Is that true?
Hey, we're going to jump back into the conversation in just a second, but I saw a YouTube stat recently that shocked me. 68.8% of the people that watch and listen to the Think Media podcast are not subscribed. So if you're loving this conversation and you want unfiltered YouTube tips for building a profitable channel, then hit the subscribe button so you never miss a future episode. Okay, let's jump back into the show.
I think what happens to all entrepreneurs, like, and I'm guilty of this, I want to outsource everything.
Sure.
Just
you get to a point where you're like, I'm done. Like,
Yeah.
can I just have somebody like fully run my Facebook ads? Maybe, but you still got to be in it.
Correct. Yeah. And so you still got to keep your foot in. And I've done this with my companies too. I've tried this over and over and over and over and over. And I'm always trying to replace myself. I believe that the business is there to provide my lifestyle and give me time and freedom and be with my family and all that, not for me to be in the middle of it. Mm-hmm. And so I'm always looking for ways where I can delegate, but that comes with the price, especially if you hire wrong or you don't train correctly or that person's not committed or whatever it is. But with this, it's different. I think people, they want to hear from me. I'm the one that is investing their money. Mm-hmm. And I can't pass that off to somebody and say, Ken says, or this is what I think. Because again, it's no different than, just somebody, it's just, they see it. You're just outsourcing it to somebody because you don't have the time for me. So that's the way I see it.
So I bet everybody listening to this would want a Josh. They'd want a Josh archetype. What would you say his role is if there was a job title?
Well, first of all, he's unemployable.
I understand. So, because first of all, they're like, there's this unicorn and, essentially a YouTube strategist, but maybe a few other things. And, where do I find these unicorns? But what even is it? What would you call it?
Yeah. It's a great question. And not to mention the fact that you go down a rabbit hole and then you realize it's not. Mm-hmm. Right. That's actually the real issue. And
that you realize the individual is not a unicorn. They're a tiny horse and they were just flexing. The brochure was big. And that's true. Like does the person really have the chops, the depth? Yeah. It's like anything else.
Yeah. And I think what clears all that out is that question you asked me earlier, which is the percentage of the rev share,
If they've got the confidence.
That clears that just eliminates the playing field right there. And if you hold the line there, you will find it.
So back to what does Josh do? Would you say it's the packaging? It's the title, thumbnail, concepts. You said you probably would have flatlined if it wasn't for essentially getting a YouTube strategist.
Yeah, for sure. Right. You don't know what you don't know. Mm-hmm. And as great as Jerry is, and he is, he only has so much capacity himself.
Yeah.
So I think you always got to be looking, how does Josh and Jerry work together, right? And they work together really, really well. Josh is a consultant; he's not on my payroll. He has his own business, and I'm a client. So that I think is a great relationship. But what Josh does is he sits down with me. And he's like, what's going on in your business? And I'm like, boom, boom, boom. This is all the stuff I'm working on. He's like, oh my gosh, like, okay, let's do this, let's do that. And he'll go out and do a research on something that I'm really already doing. And he'll take something that I don't really think is that significant. And I'll go, that's really interesting. That I think people would really like to hear
and
about.
Turn it into an angle.
Yes.
Turn it into a video.
Yeah. So
after a conversation
with me. Yeah.
And so this is interesting too, because I think maybe the myth some people believe would be, why can't Jerry doing the videography, the editing, he's shooting, he's doing all this stuff. Well, why can't he just, do everything? But there's different skill sets.
Yeah.
And there's different, like you said, bandwidth and capacity. And so this YouTube strategist position is a particular set of skills. Different than videography. These are all different skill sets. And am I tracking?
Yeah, 100%. Right. And then I think if you're really managing this, then that evolves as well.
Yeah.
If you're really looking at your KPIs or your analytics, and which I wasn't in the beginning. But now I'm seeing, oh, okay, yeah, I get it here. So now that's what Josh brought. He's like, there's a drop off on this video. We need to do this, so all the stuff that Jerry and I didn't see before that now Jerry knows, which is awesome.
Which levels up the whole team
Absolutely,
by working with a consultant.
Yes, correct.
You get coaching, you get strategy. It might be temporary because everybody absorbing that information, maybe somebody internally is developed by that individual.
Yes, right. Yeah. So the whole team gets better. And Josh has definitely made our whole team better at the way he views things, the way he views thumbnails or titles even. So in the beginning, Jerry was filming, he was editing, he was doing the titles, he was doing the thumbnails, right? And we actually did very well. I'm very, very, very pleased with what Jerry did.
Yeah.
But now Josh brings a different perspective and the whole team's getting a little bit better, even on our podcast titles and those kinds of things.
I want to talk about what you've learned working with a co-host who is also your wife.
Yeah.
But one final question. Was Jerry the first person you reached out to on Craigslist?
Yeah.
So do you feel you got lucky kind of?
Yeah.
Yeah, because as I feel like, almost 100% of business owners wish they could go on the internet and find, we call them a shredditor, a producer, shooter, editor.
Yeah.
That's local. Like, my gosh, if I could go on Craigslist, find somebody that could come to me or film and that could do, Jerry, like you said, he actually was doing titles and thumbnails and all that stuff. And he was the whole genesis of your channel. But sometimes you have to kiss a few frogs before you meet a prince.
Yeah.
And you got lucky though. You got the first person you reached out to on Craigslist. I guess final thoughts there, because maybe the perseverance it would take, or in 2025, a business owner's like, okay, is it worth it to find a Jerry?
Well, okay. So I'll tell you exactly how that process worked. Jerry's, by the way, is in his 50s and he's an ex-banker.
Okay.
And he's like, I'm tired of the banking. The banking business is, consolidating. And he's like, I'm going to start my own thing. So he started his own thing as shooting photography and videos and things like that. So he did not understand social media, did not understand YouTube, did not understand any of that stuff.
Got it.
I was interviewing because I didn't know better. I think we had 4 different interviews. 4 different people applied for the position, and I picked Jerry.
Okay, so you had 4 applications for a video position.
Yep, I actually had more than that, but I actually spoke with 4 people.
Got it.
Then I picked Jerry, and then from there we learned together. So he did not. He's in his 50s, right? He didn't grow up with social media and all this stuff either, just like me. So so we were learning together. Buying books, like Mr. Beast's book, and studying that book and going through the chapters and like, okay, let's try this. Going on YouTube videos, and so Jerry became obsessive with trying to be better, and so he's developed into that. And
powerful.
So, yeah.
One other thought about this. How important is chemistry when it comes to getting a team member like that? What I mean is, man, if they're going to be in the studio with you, filming with you, and it could be in any role, but when it comes to the person's vibe.
It's everything, we're like brother and sister, or 2 brothers, I guess. That's how we argue all the time. Right?
Yeah.
And in a good way, right? Respectfully, right? And he's got his opinions, I've got my opinions, and we both respect each other's positions. And 80% of the time it's perfect, but I love it, because the last thing you need is a yes person ever. But you have to have the vibe, you have to have the chemistry. He's incredibly loyal, and in the beginning, as you can imagine, it wasn't that great of a channel. And so, he's watched it grow.
So timeline, I love this story because you meet Jerry, you actually do go through kind of a interview process. You narrow it down to 4, you find the right individual and you grow with them. Realistic expectations. You were in the benefit of being in the pandemic. People were locked down. They're watching stuff, but nevertheless, you had a growth curve. And so this investment into YouTube was certainly not overnight. You've got crazy, almost 500,000 subscribers now. I mean, future is bright. This thing is just going to continue to grow. But what would you say, just like any other business too, if you're going to commit the capital, the mindset, maybe the team, there's risk. Risk is in the definition of entrepreneur. No guarantee it's going to work out. But if you also don't give it an adequate effort, then you can't judge yourself for failing because you're like, oh, I just kind of dabbled at it and you like tried for 2 weeks. What do you think is a range of if a business was going to put some money, time, team into a real serious YouTube strategy, how much time they should commit?
I will say that I first think you really have to have a really hard conversation with yourself about whether or not your product is good. Like, you know, I know that's kind of harsh, but
Sure.
But the reality is everybody thinks like, you know, I'll just pick on realtors, right? Everybody thinks that realtors all think what they do is unique, right? Okay, well, there's 1,000 of them doing the same kind of stuff. Okay, now, I'm not saying they're not good, but the point is it's a pretty crowded space. And how do you differentiate yourself? So I think you got to start there because if you're trying to run alongside of all these things, then the noise is there and it's hard. So you really have to, I think.
So people skip to marketing. You're actually saying, let's start. What's your USP? What's your unique selling position?
Yeah.
What are you bringing fresh to the online space, the education space,
Yes,
the YouTube space?
That's different.
Strategic conversation first. Okay.
Yes. And then I think it gets really exciting because if, there is always something. And for me, it was, fly on the wall. Like, how can people see what's really going on in the boardroom, on these big deals? And, how are we really structuring them and how's the money being
Which
raised?
is super unique.
Correct. Very unique.
At the level you're playing.
Correct.
So you think about, and would you say listeners, there maybe are some unique angles. They don't realize it. Like what is it about your life, your business, the behind the scenes? Bring the camera to the authentic place. You're kind of digging in, but like you got to find out something fresh to bring to it.
Right. That I think is first and foremost. Yeah. And then I really believe because you're gonna accelerate at a faster rate with something like that. People are going, oh, this is something I didn't know about. Mm-hmm. This is something that I'm going to follow this person. A great example is, all the online supplements or all the online workouts and, you know what I mean? It's a really crowded, hard space.
Really crowded.
Very difficult. Right. So, what is it that is really, really super unique? Right. And, and I think that, real estate is the same. So what is it? And that I think is the number one thing. And then I believe it's much easier to build a team around that.
How long did it take you? If you when you think about the time and money, we know you spent $150,000 on the studio. You didn't need to spend that, but what was your mindset as far as investing? You said it took some time. Took some time for Jerry to learn.
Yeah. It's
months.
Years.
Years
for sure. Yeah. And every year, when I'll just tell you some of the numbers, like in the first couple of years during the pandemic, right out of the gate, we were doing over 30,000 a month on YouTube
in revenue.
Yeah. Wow. I was like, this is awesome.
So timing helped because everyone's locked down. They're watching.
And I thought, oh, this is normal.
But then it went down.
To 10.
Okay.
I was like, oh, okay. So all of a sudden I was like, oh, this is good. This is lock and leave.
Yeah.
No. So all of a sudden that went all the way down to 10. And I was like, okay. And I had kind of put a team together. I was like, okay. So all of a sudden we had all this cash paying people. And it was great. And I was like doing my thing. And then I was, this is going the other way now, which YouTube can give and it can also take. And so all of a sudden I was like, okay, I have to figure this out. And that's when I started figuring it out. And I was like, okay, the videos are, too long. They're this or that. They're not edited well, all that stuff. And then start going back up again. And so that was a really good lesson. It came too easy. Then it went away. And I was like, okay, just by the way, that's how business is. That's how my business is. That's how all my businesses are.
Sure.
Yeah. So it was good. And then it was even better because when it's going the other way, that's when you learn.
So we got to talk about co-hosting with your wife, but I have one other question. I want to close the loop. Early on, you said YouTube pays for itself, essentially. This team you're talking about, the investment in YouTube is self-liquidating. It covers cost. Do you treat it as its own business within your business?
Yeah.
Did you set it up?
I set it up that way.
It's
Yeah.
its own LLC.
100% set it up as its own LLC.
Interesting.
And we just signed a big contract, advertiser.
What is all in that LLC? Just the YouTube channel, or essentially like the education brand side of things?
So I have it's called KenMcElroy.com. And it's just an LLC, and all the, we get the podcast revenue, the YouTube revenue, the app sponsor revenue, or anything like that all dumps into there. The stuff from our Ken Pro subscriptions, it all dumps into there. And then we run a P&L just like anything else. So we have, the Josh's, what do we pay Josh? What do we pay Jerry? What do we pay Steve? All that stuff is all on there.
Got it. So you've got construction company, you've got the real estate deals, you've got these different entities. You started essentially a media company entity.
Yeah.
So if you were like a roofing company doing 10 million a year in the Pacific Northwest, where we're recording this, and you wanted to then go into this media play, one way of thinking about it would be, okay, I'm going to set up an LLC, and if they were maybe to do something similar to you, eventually it's going to be maybe a mastermind, and maybe events, and then the YouTube revenue, the podcast sponsorship. The way you looked at it was, I'm starting a media. Would you call it a media company? Would you call it a personal brand?
I would call it a media company now. A couple of reasons. One, I dumped all my book revenue in there.
Okay.
To also seed it, right? Because the books I have my own publishing company.
Where was it going before?
The publishing?
Well, yeah, I mean, because it was nice to have the book revenue and to seed it.
Yeah.
Was it a different entity?
Yep.
Or was
it was
just...
it was in KenMcElroy.com, but it was a company called KM Press.
Yeah.
So there's the publisher and then there's the author.
Sure.
I'm both.
Okay.
But I also have books, other people's books that I publish. So I was dumping the author revenue into KenMcElroy.com, and then I also put Limitless into there. So
the event.
Yeah, the event, right?
Yep.
And so it was more than had more enough capital to kind of pay for itself. And so that's how I funded that.
Okay. Loving this conversation. This is a whole nother level of tactics and detail. You co-host with your wife.
Yeah.
And you talked about early on, it sounds like both of you were already maybe ready to jump on camera, but you also had a learning curve. You went to comedy classes together.
Yeah.
And was this her ambition to be on camera with you? Was it a tough learning curve? When did it start? I need to hear the details.
She for sure did not want to be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was it your idea?
Yeah. Well, it was kind of both. So here's what was happening. I was getting criticized by being too high level.
Okay.
I started small, like most people, but I don't talk that. I talk about what I'm working on. So people
I can't wrap my head around $53 million multifamily deals.
Correct.
I'm trying to start real estate.
Right. So I had that issue. Again, listening to the customers, right? And that's the majority of them.
Totally.
The majority of the customers are not tracking with me. So that was an issue that we had at the channel. Whereas my wife, she's knocking down these little deals and putting renters in there. And the other thing that was pretty interesting is that she, the way she was raised, which is amazing, her parents taught her, don't have any debt, right? And I'm like, no, you need debt.
Sure.
And so we have this different opinion.
How much debt do you got?
Debt? Oh gosh, $600 or $700 million probably.
Yeah.
Easy. Probably maybe even a little
Is that
more.
a learning curve for her?
I know.
She was taught no debt. You're like, we got $700 million in debt now.
She's like, no, not me.
Yeah.
You.
Yeah.
So anyway, she was buying these single families, and she doesn't have any debt on them.
Yeah.
So she would pay them off, and I was like, why don't you put some debt on that? No. So we would have these little discussions, I guess. And I said, it's really, she has like the Dave Ramsey approach, which is, stay out of debt.
Totally.
And
even in real estate.
100%. And I don't always agree with him and for various reasons, but I think that for the right amount of debt is because my tenants pay it off, not me. So yes, I don't want to be in debt. I don't want to be in credit card debt or, my automobiles or anything like that. But for something that's an asset, that's, anyway, but she still doesn't want any debt. So I was like, we need to, talk about this. So first started that way. And she, she's out looking at stuff. Like she's doing small deals and finding renters. She's in the property management world. So she's got these great stories, the property management side. She's doing some Airbnb stuff. And so she's got a real estate license. And so she's boots on the ground, Main Street, looking at MLS and very different from what I do. And so we would circle back.
When did that start?
Well, she's always done that before.
When did the co-hosting start?
Oh gosh, maybe 4 years ago.
So
3-4 years
you've been
ago.
doing this about 5 years. She got in about 1 year
about
into
a
it?
year. Yeah, year and a half later.
How was it first couple episodes? Rough or smooth?
No, it was really smooth because we had already had the convos, right? So I'm like, it's actually interesting. Like we'll go home and she's like, oh, I'm doing this. And I'm like, she just can't wrap her head around the stuff I'm working on. And well, she can, she understands it. But and so mostly it was about me talking about her stuff. And I go, and so she came on, she's pretty natural. And it was really, 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 really good. She's also the A student in our family. I am not. And so that was really, really good. So she comes to these very prepared, like, the podcast
structure.
Very much.
Is that the main? So you do your own solo videos, but essentially is the co-host thing the podcast?
Yeah, we do that live. And then every once in a while, we'll do some other stuff together. But, like she does, it's really been fun. And she's pouring herself into this because she owns a bunch of real estate now, free and clear, has her own tenants, her own income and all that stuff aside of me. And I think that's really appealing for married couples where she's got her own thing, her own LLC, she's got her own money coming in. So that's been well received as well.
Do you recommend couples working together?
Depends. I was married before, and my wife raised our kids incredibly, but did not know or care really, or didn't even ask questions about what we were doing ever. And so,
She didn't even have the desire.
Correct. Right. Which is fine. Like, I mean that sincerely, but we could not have been more different. Mm-hmm. And so, she was doing a bang up job raising the kids, and I was doing a bang up job growing my business. But oftentimes that just wasn't, the flow wasn't there, on whatever it is that, each of you do that day. Right. Whereas Danielle and I, we've been together for almost 10 years. It's very different. She's out doing her thing. I'm out doing her thing. And so there's some synergy, quite a bit actually, in what we're, she's literally, I'll tell you the funniest question. We were in the office the other day, and Jerry, I go, when does the Fed meet? She goes, June 17th and 18th. And Jerry's like, you guys are a mess. He goes, that's your conversation? And I go, yeah, it kind of is, like we're both looking at those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of synergy there.
And assuming the person does have the desire, if you're giving a friend some wisdom about how intertwined they want to be in business with a spouse, what kind of maybe prompting questions would you ask them?
Yeah.
Are you a business owner or serious content creator that is struggling to crack the YouTube code? Are you feeling stuck, overwhelmed, or just plain frustrated with slow growth? If so, then our new one-on-one coaching program at viralvideocoach.com is your premier ticket to YouTube success. Becoming the authority in your niche, attracting engaged leads and loyal customers. We offer one-to-one coaching with our YouTube experts that'll help you get results fast and a supportive community that's cheering you on. So if you're ready to stop wasting time with trial and error and to stop leaving money on the table, then head to viralvideocoach.com to apply to see if you qualify for our coaching program. But heads up, this offer is not for everybody. It's only for serious content creators and entrepreneurs that are ready to take action. So if that's you, head to viralvideocoach.com to apply or click the link in the show notes. All right, let's jump back into the episode.
I think a lot of times, I always do this with partnerships, not necessarily just spouses.
Sure.
Like what?
Basically, I mean, in the same, not quite this deep of a level, but like business partnerships are.
Right. Like I have a business partner.
Yeah.
Ross. He does construction and debt. I work on acquisitions and equity and property management and the operations, and we communicate a lot. So he's crushing it. I'm crushing it. We get together. We talk frequently, and text and talk almost every day. Well, so it has to do every partnership that I've ever seen. Now, it doesn't matter if it's husband, wife, or two business partners. It's always that one person feels like they're pulling more weight than the other. Mm-hmm. Doesn't matter who. Mm-hmm. Like it doesn't matter if it's a woman, doesn't matter if it's a guy, doesn't matter the age. And so that is primarily the issue. And so the question is, if they're not aligned or they do the exact same thing, it's probably not a good partnership. So they really have to communicate about this, because I find that what happens is it's like I've had so many businesses over the years. There are some partners that look at that company as the paycheck. There are others that look at it as money for growth. Just that issue is going to crush a partnership. Because you have one that wants to pull money out, the other wants to keep money in. Mm-hmm. Doesn't matter, their age or their gender. It's just so you have all these things. I think that you got to be aligned on from a partnership standpoint.
You think people rush into them too much?
Oh yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, all the time. They do it like haphazardly, and it's and I'll tell you. So I had my own business, and Ross, my partner, has his own business. And I was looking to expand, and he was looking to expand. He had a construction company and a construction license. He's a general contractor. And I was like, one of the things I need is a general contractor's license and understand how to build apartments, because I build apartments too. So we have about 150 million under construction right now. And so that was part of that strategy. Now, and so when we met, I was like, okay, he brings this construction and development piece that I don't know how to do. And, so I think when you blend into a partnership, you have to look at things. How do they benefit whatever it is you're going to do? And do they bring a different perspective? Like my wife, who brings that, like, again, I had this big gap for, I thought, the majority of the audience. And she resonates not only with the women, but just anybody who's doing that single family stuff.
So the power in this case, you've learned working with the co-host, is there was already that dynamic that you guys had. There was the desire there. It started naturally, but also the power, also having the man's perspective, the woman's perspective, two different energies makes the show more interesting. And then also the two different levels. So does she to this day sometimes say like, oh, can you explain that a little bit or break it down? Because
it's way better.
She's fighting for the audience where you're talking up here and then she pulls the info down.
Absolutely. And that is the beauty of it, right? Because and also I give her the permission to do that. Not that she needs it, trust me. But what my point is what I'm saying is I don't get frustrated with that question because I don't even realize I'm doing it. I'm talking about capitalization rates or internal rates of return or whatever it is. And it's like, whew. And she's like, whoa, walk me through that. It's so good, and so, yeah, that's what she does. And she has a really, really, really good way of bantering with me too, so it's fun.
I've got a couple final questions. I think these would be like some of the juiciest questions that we will talk about. But before we get there, I want you to give a call out to some of your stuff. We'll link it in the show notes. But if people want some of your resources, and then tell us more about the event.
Yeah. So KenMcElroy.com is the place to go for everything, right? Everything's on there. You can find our company, all my stuff that I'm doing. The big event we have is called Limitless. It's called limitlessexpo.com. So what I did was I was like, we need a venue with all these different experts to be able to say what's up, right? Real people, not necessarily speakers, not big name speakers. These are people that are really doing stuff. And so we have like a manufacturing panel. We have a crypto panel. We have a gold and silver panel. We have a water panel. We have somebody talking about timber, self-storage, everything. And it's super vetted. And so I'm actually going out and trying to find all these folks that can really talk about these kinds of things. And a lot of times they don't have books, they don't have big followings or anything like that, but they're really doing cool stuff. So that's what Limitless is. And it's really, really, really grown.
Can anybody attend?
Yeah.
You said it's mostly accredited investors, though?
That's where it's headed. It's interesting. It's not really a beginner. So we don't really say this is how you buy your first this or buy your first that. There's a lot of people that do go that are looking. I would say we get a lot of people that are making a lot of money somehow. They're paying a lot of tax and they're crushing it in business and they're trying to figure out, how do I legally keep more? A lot of professionals, doctors, lawyers, that kind of stuff. And so, yes. And it's really been, last year we did a whole thing on health. And I got RFK Jr. To come.
Yeah.
And I interviewed him in front of a couple thousand people. And all we did was talk about, this is before, I got him before he was appointed by Trump or any of that. And it was we just talked about health, the COVID vaccine. And now he's got his own views and I don't agree with all of them. But the point is it's different. It's not, it wasn't a real estate conversation.
Yeah.
It was about cybersecurity and those kinds of things.
Interesting. So, and where is it?
It's in Dallas, Texas at the Gaylord. It's limitlessexpo.com.
Okay, great. We'll link that in the show notes as well. And then, of course, also the networking. So this is a different kind of room of people that you're...
Yeah, that's what a lot of people go for. So we have, like, the sponsors are paying big money now because of the following, because it's been so fruitful for them.
The type of people there. They want to get in that room.
Yeah.
Yep. That makes a lot of sense. Okay. As we land the plane, what is one belief about YouTube that you had 5 years ago that you no longer believe now?
A belief around YouTube that I had that I don't have now. I don't think it's as difficult as I first thought. In other words, for example, for me in the beginning, it was like trying to learn like Chinese or any kind of a foreign language. And, as you know, and I do, I try to learn all I can. Once you start to just put one foot out and the next one out, I think most people can figure this out with, some books like you guys have written online. There's these little things that next thing you know, in 6 months to a year, you'll be as good as anybody.
I love that. And then how about an overlooked piece of advice that you wish every business owner knew about investing in content creation? I
would say that what you don't see, do the opposite of what people are doing. And what do you mean? Well, there's the people, the organic way to grow is non-flashy and being super authentic and telling the truth and, telling where all the bones are buried or whatever you want to call it. That takes risk. A lot of people don't see that, but that's actually, I think, what everybody wants, because the crowded space is all the hype. So it's the opposite. And so some of the stuff that gets one of the things drives me nuts is, I was looking at this A/B testing with Eric Sue the other day, and he sent me this thing. It was super cool. It's like the exact same topic, one positive, one negative, and the negative had like 2 or 3 times more. And I just shakes my head. It just drives me nuts that people gravitate toward that, but they do. And so all that really means is that if you can come out with that stuff and it's truthful, you'll crush it.
So you're talking about maybe a doom and gloom, especially in real estate and finance. People will do the doom and gloom negative angle, and people will do the positive angle, and you could call it clickbait. And the negative one gets 3 to 4 to 5x more views.
It drives me nuts.
But your point is, if the negative one is true, then you're being honest.
Correct.
But if you're just baiting views and that becomes your brand, be careful.
And there's people out there that have done that.
Yeah.
They're like, okay, I mean, how many crashes are you really going to predict? Right? Like
My friend Michael Zuber from One Rental at a Time says, he calls them doomers.
Yeah.
It's a whole category in real estate. And like they might not even be investing in real estate, but they make a lot of money off YouTube ad revenue. I mean, relatively, because they can get so many views off doom.
Yeah. Yeah. And I that's just the wrong, I think that's just the wrong way to do YouTube, period.
Yeah.
Because it's just not truthful. It's not authentic. And they're doing it just to, pay their bills. If you can, and by the way, there's plenty of stuff that goes down in business, right? There's plenty to discuss.
Sure.
So that's what I would do.
Okay. Last question that I, with the blessing of having you here, and I want to just thank you so much for all the wisdom and taking the time to come to the studio here. The personal question that people could be a fly on a wall and listen to. We're about to celebrate our 10-year anniversary in October of this year for our company. There was 5 years before when it was just a side hustle YouTube channel, but that's basically 10 years of getting serious as an entrepreneur, starting a business. Around 25 W-2 employees, probably 10 more contractors, and on our way to 8 figures a year of top line revenue. I'm curious, I am 41, I'll turn 42 this year. What advice do you have for me at this season in my journey?
At the 10-year.
Sure. Coming up to 10 years of business, 42. You might say, if I knew then what I know now, maybe how I'm navigating, red flags to avoid, things that I might not be able to see, just taking the unique opportunity to get to sit with you here and, seek wisdom.
Well, I just celebrated a couple of years ago, 20.
Okay.
With my partner, we had a huge event around it. And we're, a couple of years, we got our 25. And I think what I've found is that my experience has been that everyone is good. Like every employee, every vendor, I believe that. And I think there's value in everyone. And what happens is, as busy business owner, sometimes we don't take the times. People learn at different stages. They learn at different speeds. And so I think for us, one of the things that has been extremely successful, people talk about, getting promoted and all that kind of stuff, which is great. But one of the mistakes that you can make is, and we made this, is we promoted people that had been with us from day one into positions that they ended up not being great at. And I know this is the opposite again, but and not that we let those people go, but what happens is, I think a lot of times is people want the vision and they want to grow. And we promoted people because it was easier. Oh, this person. And so what happens is you load up your really good folks with things, and then they don't do a good job. And or you move them to something that like water off a duck's back. Oh, I got this, and they're crushing it. And then you move them over here, and then their energy's lower and all that kind of stuff. And I'll give you one example. We did a company event where we had a girl that was with us for 8 or 9 years, and her supervisor came over to me and he's like, "Hey, this girl, she's not doing such a good job." And I looked at him and I go, "What changed? Like she's been amazing." Well, but he had his list, right? And I looked at her and her energy was low and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, so I was on stage and we had this lady come in and we were talking to the group. There was about 100 people in there, and she stood up and about something else. And I go, "So what's going on with you?" And she just started crying. And she's like, "My mom's, got cancer, and I had to move, and I'm driving 75 minutes every day here and there." She had this whole, everything just kind of came out, right? The whole room, obviously, lost it. And that was it. And so what happens is, people have real stuff going on. And so as a business owner, sometimes you don't consider all of those things.
So as we land the plane, I just want to make sure I understand you. On the one hand, it sounds like your answer to my question is people. That like what thinking of at 10 years in, people, think about people. Part of it, think about really caring for your people and staying connected to them. And that also through the ups and downs of seasons, they might be going through stuff with family, different issues, and they grow at different rates and you want to grow with them. But also as it pertains to people, be careful how you promote, or if they're in a particular area. And am I hearing that the maybe the mistake is that in some cases, let them continue to crush it in their area or be at this level in the company, but you maybe need to bring somebody else. It's easier to promote somebody, but you need to maybe think bigger, hire externally.
Yep.
Because if you're going to go to that next level, maybe some of the people that got you here can't get you there.
Well, and the other thing, and I'll just end with two other things. One is when you bring somebody new into a company that's, crushing it like you guys are at 10 years, they come in with this fire in their belly, right? That some of the other people that have been out like this the whole time don't necessarily have. By the way, not bad, just is. And so all of a sudden that can be good,
Yeah.
And then the last piece is, I think, is, every piece of business, every piece you need to focus on margin. So, I always laugh when somebody says, I go, well, we're not making any money. Well, we'll make it up in volume. Well, no, we won't. Like, volume doesn't help if there's no margin there. And so the margin is really important. So when you're looking at venturing forward in something, what's the actual return? Because there's time, which of course we don't necessarily always value ourselves. I wish we did, but we don't, but then there's the money. And so I think those are really, really important things. And once you hand the keys to the kingdom over to the staff, it doesn't always go the way you think, because they don't always look at the business like you. They don't always say, well, how much was that stapler? Mm-hmm. Right? They're like, we need 10 staplers.
So costs can drift.
Yeah.
The way they steward the money can drift.
It does drift. And it's just part of human nature. It's not right or wrong. It's just, again, it's kind of like the YouTube channel, right? You can't back away and just expect, so I make a joke, with AI, for example. I have a really good friend that's in YPO that has 160 people. He's a PR and ad agency out of LA. And he's like, I got from 160 to 110 people because of AI. I'm like, oh, that's good. I think we must have hired all those people. You know what I mean? Because everybody in my company's hiring content writers and all this stuff. But by the way, I'm not saying we shouldn't have them.
Sure.
But I'm saying that, so what happens is, in an older company like mine, things like accounting and marketing and HR and all that stuff, that's really, if I was to start that business today, it'd be very different. Right? With all the systems that you have.
Sure. And so AI might make some positions like it's so disruptive.
Correct.
But your company has grown, and organizations drift towards bloat.
Yes.
And they drift towards complexity.
Yeah. And they already feel like they're at capacity, right? Everyone in your business feels like they're at capacity. So how much time do they really have to go, how do I make my job more efficient? And, is it really aligned with them? Not normally. So it needs to come from the leadership. And so that's been a big one too, is there needs to be somebody in the visionary role that is saying, hey, we're not hitting margins here. And, why do we need all this excess? Is there a better way? Is there a more efficient way? And I think everyone kind of went through this last 10 years of buying software, that would, save them 20, 30%, and all they really did is just buy a lot of software. But I think this next chapter is different with AI.
I mean, this is kind of common on our events and our podcasts. I'll say we're landing the plane and people are like, how long is this taking? I'm like, well, we're taxiing to the, gate right now. You'll be off the plane soon. But one final topic, you brought up AI, and that's a big deal.
Yes.
You're bringing it up. It's changing.
Huge.
What's your take? And especially if I'm thinking about our 10-year anniversary. You're coming up on 25 in business. And there's people that are just starting right now, but it's an entirely different landscape. What is your take on AI, the impact on the workforce, the content creator, the investor?
I think it's the greatest time to start a business ever. I mean that. Like now, if you're in a service business, like I'll just give it. I got a 12-page term sheet the other day from something that I'm working on, and I'm running 100 miles an hour. So I shot it into AI. I said, "How would you renegotiate this?" Right? You know what I mean? I'm like, "Oh my gosh." Printed it, grabbed it, or I saved it and read it on the plane. Instead of sending it to an attorney, which I would have normally done, and I think that if you're in a CPA or a bookkeeping role, you should have your eyes wide open right now. Same thing with legal. I have a really good friend that owned a syndication legal attorney, owned a very, very successful business, syndication attorney, securities attorney. Out of LA, Orange County, and he sold to his partner about a year ago. He called me and he's like, "I just want you to know first thing." I go, "Why?" He goes, "In 5 years, well, this business is all going to be online." And so, the people that are really paying attention are seeing that. And it just looks to me, especially with AI agents and the way these are all getting set up, and we're at the very beginning. I think we're in the first few innings. And I think that the older companies like mine, most of them aren't going to change. They're just not.
Are you guys going to change?
Yes, I'm trying, but again, it's like I got this cruise ship.
Yeah.
And trying to turn it, with 20 years of loyalty and all that stuff, of systems and stuff like that.
Did you see these letters from the CEOs of Shopify and some of these other businesses that said they leaked, and they basically said like, "Hey, all of your jobs are in jeopardy," kind of. And they're like, in mine too. Like, if I don't adapt, if I don't grow, and these were CEO company-wide memos or letters because of AI, and essentially also just changing KPIs and quotas and saying, "Hey, if you could get there without AI, well, cool, but that's probably impossible. So the bar's raising, y'all need to adapt." Have you sent a message like that to your team?
Well, first of all, I think that's a heck of a great strategy to leak that memo, because yes, that's where it's headed.
Yeah.
And yes, I'm having those conversations, but like anything, when you have a legal team or a team in accounting, and we're heavy accounting and obviously legal and all that kind of stuff. It's like prying up a rock that's sitting in the dirt hard. It's just it doesn't move. Their capacity, you have to first educate them, on what you're looking at, and they have no clue. So it's like, I remember I used to use a driver all the time, Ted. I love this guy, and he had 9 cars and he was crushing it, and he had contracts with all the hotels. And I was in San Francisco, and when Uber got released, long time ago, and I used it, and he picked me up in Arizona, and I go, "Hey Ted, man, you got to watch out for Uber." What are you talking about? Next thing you know, no Ted. Right. And so that's, I think, we saw that with the travel agencies, and, we're seeing that I think it's coming with financial planners. It's certainly happening with real estate agents. You start to see these businesses that are really just commission salespeople for something bigger. I think this is very different. We have Waymo in our area, which is the driverless car in Phoenix. And I take them every once in a while, and sometimes I need a bigger car. So I always ask the Uber guys, I'm like, "Hey, why aren't you out here? I never see you guys anymore." He goes, "We can't compete." So they can't compete with a driverless car already. And so they're out in the Chandler, Gilbert, Tempe area where they're not yet. And so, you start to see these things.
These shifts.
Already.
These paradigm shifts.
Big shift.
Do you think the average person is underestimating AI?
I do. Yeah, I do. Yes. I mean, the employer is looking at it because, as you know, with inflation, our costs are up, our labor costs are up, everything's up. And it's, I was on a Zoom call this morning with a friend of mine who said that he represents a company where they have an AI board member. You can believe that?
Okay.
Think about that.
So it's like an AI I mean, is it a sentient being?
I didn't go
Do
into
they
it.
have equity?
I didn't go into it, but I was like, that's incredible. So
they-
you feed it.
They try to keep it happy.
Everything
They
you
try
need.
to
I don't know,
give it
man.
gifts.
I was like, man, that's crazy.
Yeah.
You know, and if you think about it, if you feed it everything it needs,
Sure.
it has it.
Well, it's super intelligence. I
Yep.
mean, I heard it put this way too. What's the IQ? Now, you can't fully apply IQ to AI because of emotional intelligence and different things yet, but humans can't compete. The IQ is peak.
Yeah.
It could be, I did the math once with ChatGPT, 180, 220, 240. So it's smarter. It just is super intelligence, especially in a particular category, decision-making, different things related to business.
And I think right now it's all at the, call it the service level stuff, right? But before long, it's going to move right up to the C-suite for sure, right?
Yeah.
Well, for sure. Like,
Yep.
it's headed that way, right?
Yep.
So all of that stuff is interesting. But if you're over 40, you're not worried.
Yeah.
But you should be.
Sure. Ken, this has been an honor.
Yeah.
And so thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for coming on
Yeah.
the podcast. And Think Media Podcast, like, rate, share, review wherever you watch or listen. My name is Sean Cannell, your guide to building a profitable YouTube channel, and I will catch you in a future episode.